Alright, what's up everyone, it's Goose. Today I'm going to be going over my Kiesel Osiris. I ordered this guitar in either November or December of 2020, and I ended up receiving it in around February actually, so it was really fast. This guitar's gone through a few different mods that I've done after receiving it, but I still think just the guitar itself, just the way that I got it from the factory, was really amazing for the price, and I will get into all the details about why I think this guitar has become one of my personal go-tos when it comes to sort of the metal style of guitar playing that I like. Going over the things that I really like about this guitar, one, I actually just really like the Kiesel neck. I didn't opt for the thin neck. This is the regular sized Kiesel neck, but it was already pretty thin. It's not like a big neck or anything, at least not compared to something like a Solar, which I think a Solar for a 7-string has like one of the bigger necks I've played. But yeah, this neck feels really great to play on. It's one of the only necks that really doesn't get me kind of tired as I'm playing. I'll be streaming on Twitch for like 2 or 3 hours sometimes, and sometimes actually on other guitars my fingers will get tired. Probably also a skill issue on my end, but I think it's also partly due to the guitar and partly due to the shape of the neck and how that works for every individual. And so this guitar's neck works really well for me. The neck is actually maple with a walnut stripe, and I think it looks great. And the fretboard is a royal ebony fretboard. You can see right here that the wood grain is very pronounced, and you can see the differences between the dark and the light portions of the wood. I have a hardtail bridge on this with the tuning pegs for the headless and volume tone. This guitar is a bolt-on, but this is one of the most secure fits I've seen on a guitar. It's really hard to notice on camera, but you really just won't see any like gap in between the neck and the seat or in the body. And that's really good because a lot of guitars that are cheaper that are bolt-on, you see the gap in between the neck and the where it seats into the body. I was kind of glad to see that not be the case. I paid right under $2,000 for this guitar, and I think it was quite the steal actually for the kind of fit and finish that I wasn't used to at the time. At that point, this was the most expensive guitar that I had gotten, and I had not realized kind of the jump between this and my previous Ibanez. You can watch a video on my Ibanez, but just the quality, not necessarily the playability, but the quality was definitely on another level. And the playability actually seems to be about the same as that Ibanez as well. The cool part about this guitar, I think, is the fact that it's so light. This, on my scale, weighs about 6.2 pounds, which is fairly light. I have a swamp ash body on it. It's just a really kind of nice balanced guitar. So if you have it on like this leg, it'll stay in like kind of the orientation that you put it in, and like however angle you want to play it, it actually balances really well. And then on this angle, same thing here, like it doesn't really move. When you have a strap on it, it doesn't neck dive, nor does it body dive. It's just perfectly balanced. I really appreciate that, especially as someone with a spine that is not in the best condition. I've had to go to doctors and stuff like that before in the past about my spine, but this guitar does not cause any issues whatsoever when I have it on a strap. There's a bevel that's kind of harder to see now that I have the swirl pattern here, but there is a bevel here that's super comfortable. Like your wrist just rests so well on it. The point where the bolt-on is, there's a really nice shave on the body so that it contours when you're getting it to the higher frets. It doesn't feel that difficult to get to the higher frets as a result. You have a ton of space to get to the higher frets. I think that the one thing about a headless guitar, especially when there's no like end headstock, like you see on some Strandbergs, you'll see that they have like a little bit of a wood design at the end that's not like a full headstock. With a guitar that doesn't have that, sometimes it can feel kind of empty up here. I think the block inlays, as I mentioned earlier, complete that look for me. I think the guitar looks complete there. I think if you were to not have inlays on a headless guitar like this, at least for my aesthetic point of view, I feel like it would look kind of empty. I think this guitar really, with the block inlay, is it brings out kind of the shape of the guitar a little bit better. But I've also seen examples with other configurations with different inlays that also look great. So I think it's just a matter of how you design the rest of the guitar to look around this fretboard too. So I actually got this guitar in a raw tone white finish, and I will post a picture of it right here so you can see what that looked like. I thought it looked really cool. I was super stoked about it. I thought it was like kind of subtle, and you seeing the the wood detail of the body and everything, and I thought it was just really, really cool. I actually ended up wearing through the raw tone finish, like right here where the bevel meets the flat top, and that's probably just due to my playing and the way that I play. But I wore through that finish, and you started to see kind of like the wood underneath. As for the finish, so as I said earlier, I had a swirl finish done. This was done by Seth Metal in San Diego, who did a great job. Actually, Seth had provided one other variation of this with a little bit more of the white color in it, and I didn't like it as much, and he was willing to do it again. And my whole aesthetic behind this guitar is to try to recreate that like 90s cup, 90s jazz cup, or I guess interior of Taco Bell sort of in the 90s. I'm big into 90s media, and so I wanted something that kind of made me feel 90s, and this definitely gave me that vibe. I think the swirl job, especially the finish, that I had it finished in a polyurethane finish, and I think it looks great, and it feels great, and it's going to last a lot longer than the raw tone finish did, which again, I mentioned, I do think the raw tone finish looked great. It just didn't hold up after about a year of playing. And even at 25.5-inch scale for a 7-string, this guitar actually convinced me to go back to 25.5-inch scale. I had been on 26.5 for 7 strings for a really long time because I thought, well, the string tension for the low B string, you'd want a little bit more scale length. This guitar completely, got rid of that for me. I definitely felt like this guitar was able to handle that low B even at 25.5. So what does this thing sound like? That's kind of been a topic of contention lately with if guitars sound a certain way. I know that we're talking about tone wood, and now we're talking about whether pickups matter at all. I have my 2 cents here. I had the Kiesel Illusionists in this before when I got it. Illusionist in the bridge and lithium in the neck. And the Illusionist just did not cut it for me. You can work with most pickups until you start swapping between guitars, and then you start to notice the differences between the different pickups. And I swap between guitars very often. I have all these guitars in different tunings. This one is in B flat standard. And when you swap between guitars, you start to notice the difference between not just how the pickups sound, but how they feel. In comparison to the DiMarzios that were in my Ibanez, the Illusionists were flubbier and they were sharper in the high end. I had the ionizers in this at some point from DiMarzio, but I actually ended up with their Illusionist pickups instead. So this is an Illusionist, and I have an Air Norton in the bridge. And so yeah, let's kind of hear how it sounds with a few different patches that I have. The signal chain will be down below. So I think the pickup combination is really awesome. I think the Illuminators and the Air Nortons are just kind of what I need. Air Nortons on the neck sound just full enough to where I feel like it gives you a great sense of like for lead playing or for clean playing. The Illuminators are aggressive when they need to be, but also very tight and focused when they aren't. And that's like a very generic thing for people to say about pickups, but I honestly do feel like the Illuminators are kind of my top of the pickup list right now for me. All right, so what are some of the cons of this guitar? Because there are some drawbacks. I didn't say it was 100% perfect. So I had this headpiece actually kind of run into an issue. At some point, I moved to a new house, and the temperature changes, I guess, was too much for it. I took this to my local tech, and he had mentioned that the screws here, so if you look closely, there are 2 screws on either side of the truss rod. The screws on the 2 sides ended up not being able to be unscrewed. And what had happened was the inserts that they put into the wood did not have any sort of grooves to catch the wood, and it was only relying on glue to hold it in place. So with all the string tension, temperature changes and everything, those inserts, the threaded inserts that the screws would screw into, ended up getting loosened. And I'll show a picture of just kind of what that looked like. And that caused a huge problem with my tuning stability at some point. Not a big deal. My tech ended up putting grooves into there and re-gluing it back in, and it's now super solid. At least for my tech, that was a 20-minute repair. It wasn't really that big. Second of all, the one thing that I did notice, and it's not a big deal when I'm playing, if you put your finger through the neck right here between the purple heart and this side of the maple, I can actually feel where the wood meets. So it's not completely like leveled. And yeah, you can feel it if you're moving this way, which you wouldn't when you're playing, but it's just something I noticed as well. I really don't think these 2 things are a deal breaker for me, and I'm actually thinking of getting another headless Kiesel at some point. If that tells you anything, that really just means that I love this guitar that much. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you like what you see, please consider hitting the subscribe and like buttons. And yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one. Later.